Welcome to Between Product and Partnerships, a podcast focused on bringing together product, partnership, and engineering leaders to discuss how to build, support, and scale SaaS ecosystems. Presented by the SaaS Ecosystem Alliance and sponsored by Pandium, an integration platform and marketplace for ecosystems.
I'm Kelly Serban, the co-founder of the SaaS Ecosystem Alliance and the director of marketing at Pandium. Welcome to the Between Product and Partnerships podcast. Today, we have a partnerships leader with a decade of experience running tech partnerships at large ecosystems, currently at Yellow.ai and previously at Freshworks. Welcome, Krishanth. To kick us off, can you tell us a little bit about your experience in partnerships?
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you for having me here. Of course, so I've spent 3 years at Freshworks. The first year was more of adding total number of apps and integrations in our marketplace. We added close to 600 apps in the first year when I joined Freshworks, talking to a whole lot of SaaS companies, trying to convince them to build an integration, talking to SI companies, trying to figure out what use cases can be built into paid apps. That is what we were predominantly doing, in my first year. Second year, the focus was primarily on adding revenues to the partner engine, right? Working with a set of partners predominantly on co-sell. Join GTM, of course, we had a marketing engine that started to work on its own. The idea was to work with partners where we can kind of exchange leads, work together on certain opportunities, and then add revenues to the company. Third year, I kind of took over the entire team, and I kind of merged both teams together because I don't want people to just add partners on one end and promise them so much, and then the second team kind of figures out that few of them are long tail and it's difficult to work. So kind of third year was more of a cleanup activity where we were trying to look at how we can add value to long tail partners as well, and then worked on partner tiering. Of course, we had it at the beginning itself, but kind of started to focus more on how we can spend our energies, our team's bandwidth across different tiers of partners. And of course, we took OKRs around churn, app adoption strategies, and then promotions, etc., apart from just adding pipeline leads, etc. So that was my role at Freshworks. At Yellow, I kind of handle channel partnerships. The primary idea is to work with partners to add pipeline, and of course, I do work with few SaaS partners as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think that's some great experience for our audience, and I think one of the things that organizations really struggle with is the prioritization of both partners and integrations. So, it sounds like you guys went through that process where you had a bunch of partners and then you sort of selected some of the software partners to have a deeper relationship with. And, I'd love to get your thoughts and advice on how organizations should kind of frame that decision. There's obviously a lot of variables, but how should they think about which partners are we going to choose to invest more in?
Got it. So the first thing is who are asking these integrations, right? It is going to be your customers. So one of the first variables that I look at is the number of integration requests that comes from customers, right? The second key thing is who are we building these integrations with? If it is going to be big giants, then it's primarily going to be you, right? So you kind of make sure that the solutions also solve for a product gap for you, right? So that will be the second key aspect. What type of partner are you going to partner with, and what kind of product gap is it going to solve for, right? That's going to be your second important variable. Fourth, of course, this is more from an engineering side. What kind of use case are you trying to solve here, right? Again, do you have open APIs, or is it going to be a native integration? Think about data flow, right? It could be one way, two way. If so, at what frequency are you going to update information, pull or push information? Is it going to be live, 15 minutes, daily, weekly? From an engineering perspective, these are a few of the variables that we look at before kind of freezing on what kind of integrations to work on and what kind of partners to work on. Of course, you can look at it from a GTM perspective, but again, at the end of the day, you'll have to kind of end it with the engineering team because they're the ones who are going to build it out. And of course, it has to make sense as a solution together.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I've heard some people say, well, engineers' time are often the most expensive time to spend for an organization. So they were sort of arguing, bring this more to the front of the process where you're not pushing something forward and then you find out it's going to take like 100 hours to get even part of the integration going. So I'd sort of be curious, what your advice is on how much of the partnerships in the product team sort of invest in scoping out the use case and also what's possible, right? Because customers might be clamoring for this two-sided bi-directional Salesforce integration, that does everything, but maybe your own API doesn't allow that. So, sort of what's your advice in terms of for the partnerships and product teams, what stage of the process should they be sussing that out, and how deep should they go before they say, let's move forward on this, let's push it over to engineering?
Okay, great. I think first things first, right? Exactly like you said, we'll have to understand whether we have engineering bandwidth or not, right? That's the most important thing. Even before we commit to an integration or commit to a partner that an integration can go forward, right? One step before that, we'll have to understand, of course, first, whether the integration will make sense. You're going to look at number of common customers that you have. Yes, the integration makes sense. Validate it with few customers. Yes, it makes sense. Why you have to do it? You need to have data to kind of convince your product teams, right? So you kind of do this, get proper data, work with your product team, look at the kind of solutions that you're solving for. Product team also gets convinced with the data that you have, and then look at engineering bandwidth at both ends, right? There are a few integrations that will be more of updating things on your systems, which means you'll have to kind of integrate, pull data from there and integrate. Or if you have an SDK platform and if you need a partner to integrate, then you kind of give UI guidelines for the partner to integrate. You'll have to kind of figure out between both of you, or if both of you do not have engineering bandwidths, can I involve an SI partner, third party, to kind of build an integration? If so, does the integration need a middleware, right? If that's going to be the case, the middleware will have to be maintained by the SI partner, right? So which means, are they going to be your trusted SI partner, or should you actually take care of maintaining a middleware in-house? Because as the integration scales, it could blow up, right? So you need someone to kind of monitor this, and it's best that you own it in-house. So you'll have, or maybe a preferred SI partner handles it, right? So kind of, I think these are the parameters that you'll have to initially decide, get in place, and kind of take it to the engineering team. Again, it's very important. I've typically noticed this, right? I keep hearing this, from different partner managers, where they kind of commit, if they own integrations, they kind of commit, say, for example, May, it kind of takes till September. Sometimes it never even comes till the end of the year. Typically, this happens because we kind of narrow down on all of this, but we kind of stop following up, right? It's really important for us to kind of follow up internally, look at where the product team is. Are they going on track with what they have in mind? In few companies, there'll be integration PMs, right? From the product side, you'll have a spot for integrations. If so, you're a little bit safe. If not, as a partner manager, it's going to be a little more hard because you'll have to kind of closely work with them. Of course, there are going to be cases where you're going to work with PMs to support them with API requests, right? There'll be some product-led integrations that they focus on. So I'm sure every partner manager is talking with your product teams regularly, and kind of make it a point that you kind of get updates from them on what's happening on the engineering side. Is this being prioritized? Have things started? So that you can kind of keep updating this to your partner side as well. And kind of, if the partner also follows a similar cycle, then we kind of at least know when an integration is going live. And of course, even before that, is it even possible for us to build on it? Hope that answers your question.
No, completely. And I think the alignment between product and partnerships when it comes to tech partnerships is just so key to success, and something that like a lot of organizations struggle with. So moving to sort of the flip side is, once you've decided which partnerships and you have a framework for investing, what's your advice? I think something that organizations, especially mid-market organizations, are still struggling with is, how do you get data and measure the business impact on retention and upsells? Once you get to a certain size ecosystem, it's very hard to do this for any individual integration. But do you sort of have advice for even how to approach it and how to look, even if it's buckets of integrations, to sort of be able to say to your leadership and to your partners, we are having this impact on retention, we are having this impact on upsells, and this is a very real and important thing, because a lot of organizations, they kind of know there's an impact, but they can't actually present that data in any systematic way.
Got it. Yeah, that's a good thing, right? I mean, just like you mentioned, retention, for example, everybody knows more number of integrations means lesser churn, but kind of trying to track and put it in a pictorial way as a data representation and trying to have OKRs around that is going to be difficult, right? But nevertheless, if you kind of at Freshworks, we did this, we kind of started to monitor churn, customers with 0 apps, customers with 1 to 2 apps, customers with 3 to 5 apps, 5 apps and above, right? We started to bucket customers. We started to compare the numbers between 2019 to 2020 to 21, and we were able to significantly see that customers with more apps tend to, I mean, the probability of churn goes down, right? As the number of apps keep increasing, the churn goes down, right? So I would recommend that the partners kind of do that activity, so that's clear proof data talking to your management that number of integrations will have to go up, right? Your customers will have to use they will be using multiple SaaS solutions. They'll have to integrate and use these solutions together, right? So this data point is enough to convince your management or get your chief customer success officer invested in partnerships, right? And kind of so that all your CSMs talk about critical integrations that we have, and then kind of that way you can kind of get buy-in from the management, so that as an org, you kind of drive towards more integrations. And that's one of the key things by which you can kind of, talk about. Of course, you can pick apps there, right? If you're going to prioritize partners there, your high velocity integrations. And then again, from an integration, if you have a mechanism to get ratings and reviews, testimonials from customers out of those integrations, those are the ways by which you kind of drive forward and kind of, convince the management with respect to number of apps directly correlating with lesser churn, right? So I would take number of installs as one key metric. Second thing is, of course, the from your joint GTM, right? One is going to be your co-marketing. What kind of value are you going to bring to the table as a partner? MDFs, or what kind of dollars are we sharing when we are kind of approaching a particular marketing activity? What kind of MQLs are being or leads that your partner is able to generate for an activity that is either co-sponsored or any of your co-marketing activities, right? Kind of try and measure all these from a co-marketing perspective and see how effective partners are. From a co-sell, again, two things, right? One, you could get leads from their marketplace, try and track that. Simple, just have UTM links, make sure that it's trackable and kind of the number of leads that are coming from a marketplace. Second, any lead introductions, right? So typically, once you start working on joint RFPs, and then you just need that one deal, right? Like kind of generally people ask me to map 10 accounts, 20 accounts across geographies. You just need that one deal, one success story to convince people across your organization that partnership works, right? So a particular integration works. So, if we are able to take it slow and then kind of co-sell, start with partners, just one co-sell opportunity at a time, and kind of by a couple of quarters or by end of the year, you'll have enough data around how many partners introduced you to opportunities, how many of them got converted, and you kind of have a funnel of the leads that came from your partners, and that's clear projection for your management to understand that closures are happening much more faster when two partners are working together, or when there is an introduction that comes from a partner, right? Because they trust a partner, and the partner recommends your solution. So the customers obviously are more inclined towards using your solution as well.
I think that's great advice on something organizations are really struggling to implement. But I think ultimately that quantitative data really speaks to leadership and speaks to partners. Do you think there's qualitative data that can supplement sort of that quantitative data, whether it's somehow convincing like the customer support NPS surveys to include something about integrations, or using like conversational intelligence in sales to see how much people are mentioning integrations and how important it is? Or are there other ways that you've seen you can sort of accumulate that qualitative add-on to the quantitative data that is showing that correlation?
Yeah, of course, right. I mean, it's very important to have reviews and ratings for your integrations, right? If you have a list marketplace, or if you have a page, it's very important that customers rate those integrations. And then, of course, going back to more of an NPS or a proof that the integration works, right? work on testimonials. These are, kind of additional ways by which you can kind of, solid proof from a qualitative perspective. Is the integration working or not, right? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, I think, some people could argue that, hey, well, people who have integrated more systems, they were just super users anyway, right? Like they were going to be using your product all the time. Um, I don't think it's that strong, but I think being able to supplement that with customers saying, hey, this Salesforce integration is critical to me. It's valuable. I'm getting a lot of use out of it. I think if you can show people are using the integration, that's kind of already backing up your point. But I think that even since it is a correlation rather than proving out causation, it's nice to supplement that with a testimonial. And I think your point about reviews, having that in your marketplace, for example, you can pull that out quite easily and say, hey, here's what our customers are saying. And, I have heard some organizations putting it on their customer surveys in general, but you can't always get that as a partnership manager, right? Like that's a limitation potentially of the number of questions. But I was just curious if you've seen any other ways to sort of collect those testimonials, even if it's case study, for example, or talking to your partners.
Yeah, exactly. Great point there, right? So when CSMs talk to end customers about getting a case study for our own solutions, we also kind of have some questions around integrations as well, right? In fact, in most of those kind of interactions with customers, a partner manager would join, and then kind of we'll get some clues around. They'll give ideas of how a use case is better in competition, but still they prefer us for XYZ reasons. They'll help us with certain use cases that are really helpful, it's very important to talk to your customers because they'll give you clues and ideas on how an integration can be better. They are the guys who are using it regularly, right? So yes, I mean, when you're working on case studies, when your CSMs are going to work with your customers day in and day out, trying to get feedback, it's important that, a partner manager kind of convinces the CSMs to kind of share those questions around integration so that we kind of get testimonials around integrations. And then that's one way how we were kind of working on getting testimonials. Another way is particularly when we used to deal with long tail. Of course, we used to share this load with partners, right? When we are working together, when an integration goes live, and if we have worked together on solving for a particular customer, we kind of ask the new customer as of whether the integration solved for them or not, and all of that, because it's easy for you to ask things from a new customer upfront, right? So kind of that's something that we have seen work well for us. We kind of share load between two partners. Can we kind of get customer? Can we talk to customers and kind of check with them on 2-3 questions around integrations, right? Hey, I'll take these customers. Can you take these customers? Kind of that's another way by which you can kind of share load between two partner managers. Kind of they talk to their internal teams and start getting integration testimonials. And with long tail, kind of for Freshworks, at least towards the end last year when we kind of went public and the company became even more popular. So it was kind of, or even before that, we had a lot of long tail partners who were willing to work with us, right? So typically you can't involve all of them. So what we typically do is we kind of ask them to kind of have a minimum of 10 integrations and then have a minimum of 2 or 3 customer case studies who talk about the integration as a testimony, right? So kind of these are other ways by which we kind of make sure that almost every integration kind of has customer feedback or testimony. And then you never know, right? Like if you're customers these days are asking for testimonials, they want to talk to other customers who are using those integrations. So you never know which customer is going to ask you when. So it's always important that you kind of keep this data handy.
Yeah, and I think that moves into another point that I'd love to get your take on, which is that, and I've kind of seen this, I think 3 to 5 years ago, both organizations and customers were a lot less savvy when it comes to integrations. They, the customers pre-purchase would just kind of say, do you integrate to Salesforce? And the salesperson would say, yes, we do. And that would, that would be enough. And then maybe a year later or 6 months later, they'd find out that, oh, actually, this is a one-way integration that just moves contacts over and doesn't really meet my objectives. My read is that, customers have become more savvy in the last sort of, couple years when they're sussing out integrations, realizing that just connecting is not enough, but I'd be curious, did you see that as well?
Yes, I mean, kind of, if you look at not only mid-market or enterprise, right? Even SMBs these days kind of want solutions to talk to each other, right? They want one integrated solution and they don't want to work on individual products. So it's important to do solution selling than product selling, right? And kind of what I've noticed is customers earlier used to probably, like you said, Salesforce integration, as long as you kind of have Salesforce somewhere in your website, they're happy. They know that there's an integration and they can kind of go ahead with you, right? But sooner or later, those kind of customers are going to realize the integration is not up to the mark and they're going to churn, right? So I think it's important for every organization to make sure that it's not about listing a logo and talking about a logo. It is about talking about the solution that both these companies bring together, right? Or talking about the exact use cases if it's there on your website, right? So yeah, I mean, we see a lot of customers spending time looking into the marketplace and then kind of reaching out to CSMs, reaching out to support email IDs to kind of hear more about integrations. And then this has clearly increased over the last 3 years. I mean, from 2019, where I used to see more of enterprise clients asking for these integrations because earlier they would have used an SI building everything end to end, so they exactly get what they want. So, when enterprise customers kind of look for integrations, they make sure that they kind of hear the use case completely before they purchase. But again, SMBs were okay with whatever you give to them. But over the last year or so, I mean, I can clearly see the number of queries around, integrations and the use cases that customers throw at us have gone off the roof.
Yeah, no, that's what we're seeing too. And I think it's really important to talk about because a lot of, especially sort of early stage companies, they're short of engineering resources. So they just want to get to be able to say they have the integrations. And you hear people saying, oh, if you have integrations, you're going to increase your retention. But the reality is, I think customers are getting more savvy. So it can actually cause the opposite effect, right? Like I've definitely heard people saying, this HubSpot integration doesn't do enough. It doesn't meet my purposes. And I'm going to look for another tool that is more deeply integrated. Another thing I think I'd really like to hear is what your advice would be on sort of the partner experience for long tail partners, because I think, when partner programs start, they usually have closer relationships. And of course, as you grow, you still have those strategic partners that you're meeting with regularly talking. But once you get to a certain point, it's just not feasible. And you have to sort of, and you've mentioned some of the things that you guys did to sort of facilitate that relationship, but how do you really, sort of create trust, create investment, get partners engaged when you can't have that high touch relationship anymore?
Okay. Yeah. So you're talking about the big partners that you want to get into, right?
No, I'm talking about like once you have an ecosystem that say has, more than 30 or 50 partners, and you are big enough that you have people who are willing to build the integration, they want to sort of be in your ecosystem. But how do you create a nice experience for that long tail so that they are not just building the integration, but they're continuing to maintain it, they're supporting their customers. And to your point about case studies, they're sort of investing in the go-to-market side, even if you can't have like bi-weekly meetings with them to sort of facilitate that or include them on like product roadmap discussions.
Got it. Great. Sorry, I got it the other way around. Cool. So long tail, they solve for a problem, right? And then kind of typically when someone, you can do it in two ways. If you have an ecosystem, there are companies reaching out to you. And in few companies, you have people reaching out to other companies. So if it's the latter, you can definitely correct this because, folks are going to reach out to the right set of audience and they're not going to think about a use case without validating and pushing partners to build integrations, right? So that could be an initial strategy to get the numbers. We did it that way, or rather, I made a mistake. I would admit that in 2019 when we started, we just looked at the numbers. We were looking at use cases. If it made sense for us, we just continued. And then we didn't, for every integration, we didn't go with the data to back us up, right? So If you're looking at having a team which is going to reach out to partners to build those integrations, then it's really important that they kind of narrow down on those use cases, right? And then when there is data to talk to, even though if it is going to be a long tail partner, they know that they're going to be short. So when we kind of help them with the use case, we kind of tell them the right kind of product gap that they're going to solve for. There is trust initially, right? So that's the first thing. Second, the other way around, when partners reach out, or even in both ways, right? In both cases, it is important for us to clearly tell the partner what they're going to expect out of listing the integration or being part of our ecosystem, right? So probably long tail are going to be tier 3 or long tail partners. We can't include them in everywhere, right? So Xero, QuickBooks, these guys do it really well, right? So kind of the idea is you clearly define when a partner qualifies to be a tier 2 partner, right? So assuming you kind of tier partners into 3, you kind of clearly tell them when you will kind of consider them or work with them in terms of co-sell or a co-marketing, right? When you will kind of invest some amount of MDFs, what is it that takes for the partner to kind of work towards you? I think if you're able to define that, partners will come to you. They'll be more aligned with whether it works well for them, right? So let's do it this way. Rather than us pushing partners, you kind of have given the use case, you let them to think through it. Or if partners are interested to build an integration with you, they have no clue about what they have to expect. You kind of dictate terms. You tell the partner that, hey, you need to get a minimum 10 integrations, 2 customer case studies. Then I'll invest in you with respect to MDFs, right? I'll invest, say, $2,000 or $5,000 with you. And at the same time, or rather, it could be on number of activities. I'll have you on 2 activities in a year, right? And then another thing to do is club 4-5 partners, long tail partners together. Try to see if you could stitch a big story where these 4-5 partners are solving different use cases, and you have a big story, right? It could be verticalized, or it could be a story that you're going to bring together. So that way, your overall cost is going to come down because you're going to bring in 4 partners. Either all of them are going to share, or it's going to be one activity where you're going to invest on, where you're going to bring 4 partners. You're going to make 4 partners happy, right? So initially, give those criteria that partners will have to meet, so that they do the heavy lifting initially. Customers are using it. There are customer testimonials as well, and kind of then you kind of invest in them. It is important to invest in them because by the end of the year, if they aren't happy and there are very less customers, they may kind of not take care of the integration, right? And in the long term, that is going to be a big problem for you, right? For your support. So it's always important for you to kind of check with the partner. The partner is invested. If not, you'll have to figure out if there are enough number of customers. You say, assuming you have 20 customers, it's important for you to maintain 20 customers, but the partner is not getting much from those 20 customers. And if he wants to walk out, you need to have a fallback mechanism on how you're going to maintain those integrations, right? So I think it's important if you kind of invest in them every year, keep a check on, are they happy? What are their plans? You kind of know, if there is an emergency situation, how you can handle those.
Yeah, that makes sense. And from a more tactical side, I'd be curious what your take is on sort of the mechanics of it, because I would imagine that a company the size of Freshworks could have a partner portal and that people would log into it. But when you get to more medium-sized or mid-market companies, there's this problem of like 1,000 partner portals, right? Like everybody's partnering with each other, and people don't want to be regularly logging into 100 different portals. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on sort of when that's a realistic experience, like how large do you need to be to offer that experience as the way that partners are communicating with you, or if there's a solution to that problem, or if that's just something that, I know there's some tools out on the market currently that are trying to become like a single pane of glass, where eventually we can all log into this mega portal and manage all our partners no matter where we are, which obviously there's a lot of value in that, but it doesn't actually really exist yet. So thoughts on sort of where, sort of at what stage you can offer that portal experience. And then I guess the second question is, how do you make it better so that people who are kind of on the fence of whether or not they want to regularly engage are sort of pushed over to have an incentive to log in, to engage, and to maintain the relationship?
Great question, right? Again, let's go back to Freshworks. You're right. There's a developer portal that Freshworks maintains, and then partners can sign in and then kind of submit the app, enter the details, and then after the approval process, the app is going to get listed in the public marketplace, right? If you're going to look at Shopify, a very similar approach. Salesforce App Exchange, everybody knows about it. So if you look at these biggies, there's no way that you can offer a one portal for everybody, right? These guys are giants, and then kind of we'll have to follow their process, and of course a partner marketing manager and a developer who is going to publish the app or a partner manager, they'll have to work together in terms of getting the listing through, right? One of the biggest challenges that I've noticed at Freshworks is because it's the developers who are going to build and test the app. Most of the times the marketing guys will have to have credentials, and then kind of at the beginning we kind of miss out. And so kind of every time someone from Freshworks will have to enable the partner marketing manager right from the beginning all over again, so that they also get a login, or we kind of add them as an agent so that they can kind of log into the developer portal, right? For Freshworks, it makes sense, multi-product. So, this is something that they're going to maintain, but for a mid-sized company, this entire portal management in itself is a challenge. That's why I guess Pandium kind of solutions come in handy, right? At the end of the day, you'll have to showcase your integrations, and managing a developer portal, managing app submission. This is huge work, right? I mean, your in-house IT team, it just doesn't make sense for you to have an IT team to manage this, because except for the partner manager, partner marketing team, nobody's gonna be seriously invested in this portal, right? And then it's really important that someone like Pandium or some of those kind of solutions that kind of takes over managing partner listing, right? But coming to your point, I think the ideal world is, everybody kind of, it's like Facebook, right? Everybody is in one platform, and you can kind of do whatever you want, and portal, everything is synchronized, looks same. It'll be difficult because for two reasons, right? One, the big companies are going to have their own ways of doing it. Second, you're right. I mean, logging in, it's going to be more of a one-time effort. All that needs to be done is, say, for example, a few of them will have a form, right? It's more of a Google form. You enter your details, upload those screenshots. There's someone to approve at their end, and it goes live at their end. They won't even have a portal. So each of them have figured out a way to manage this. But at the end of the day, unless we have enough partners in the same platform, it is going to be really hard. And because it's going to be more of a one-time activity. Say, imagine this, right? If I'm listing an integration today, I'm going to come back to it maybe in 6 months' time, or maybe after a year, when I'm going to revisit the integration, right? If I'm going to add more use cases to an integration, that's when I'm going to revisit. That's when I'm going to come back to a portal. It's not going to be a daily activity, right? When once you list it, you're done. So I don't, and at the time, you're not going to work on more than 5 or 10 integrations, right? So I honestly believe it's still okay to have multiple portals. It isn't that big a pain point to solve for. I'd put it this way: it's nice to have one platform kind of a view, but it's not a must to have.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point that, when you're listing on a marketplace, there's only, if you're not doing the constant co-marketing, co-selling motion, there's only so many times you need to log in. I think some of the more sophisticated portals obviously have the install data, the usage data, and like AWS and Salesforce have like demographic information and sort of, which can be valuable from a marketing perspective, but they also have APIs, right? So that enables people to pull it in. Now, of course, you have companies like Tackle who exist because internal teams don't have enough devs to work with the API, so that they sort of make it so that a business user can use it. But that sort of touched on another point, which is companies sort of take a different approach to how rigorous they are in the beginning in terms of approving and vetting integrations. I've seen sort of a wide spectrum. The most open spectrum would be, right, like anybody can submit an integration to be listed in our marketplace. We will sort of just approve it, and we'll say it's not certified. I don't think anybody has no distinctions on that, but they'll say sort of customer beware. We're going to have a reviews mechanism. People can say that this is a terrible integration, but we're not going to do like a sort of exhaustive, not only security review, but I think on the other end, you of course have people who are saying we're only going to do people who we want to co-sell with, co-market with. But in the middle, I've seen marketplaces say, okay, I want to vet your use case. I've seen them even say, are you different enough from the current integrations in our space? Are you solving a problem that's at least somewhat distinct? Especially when it comes to extensions. I think with integrations, you might have people using the other system that you want to provide that for them. But with, say, an extension to a platform, you really don't need, 5 calendar extensions if the first one is working. And I don't think there's a one size fits all answer, but I'd be curious, like, what your advice is on how organizations should think about the question of how open do we want to be? How much do we want to just let anybody build and the customer can like vet for themselves, to the flip side of we're going to kind of lock this down and really do a really hands-on review before we put anything in our marketplace.
Yeah, it's a good point, right? I think, again, it depends on the different ecosystems, what you as a company want to do. Something at Freshworks, what Freshworks used to encourage is an SDK app, right? Building on an SDK platform so that, the app can be verified by us. There was a 3-step review process: code, QA, and content. And then the app goes live, right? And then there were external apps where if you want to just pull APIs and update information in your system, then you're free to. There are open API documentations. You can again list those integrations in our marketplace, but those are not tested. So the marketplace comes with verified by Freshworks kind of a logo, right? Atlassian does that too. Across security and all, they have like 6 to 7 parameters, and they kind of have a checkbox or a warning symbol if something is not provided by a partner who has listed the particular integration, right? So it's left to the customer's risk. So the customer is well informed. There's something that is verified by Freshworks or Atlassians of the world, then definitely customers are going to go for those apps. If it is just being listed, then they can clearly see in the marketplace, right? So it's up to the customers to. So Atlassian, I believe, had left it to the customers to kind of deal with it. Freshworks have taken this very similar approach where verified by Freshworks, yes, we do verify. We can kind of take care of support as well, L1 support as well. And of course, we loop in whoever has built the integration. But if it is external app, please don't ask us. But there are a few others who kind of totally get it, right? So at the end of the day, the idea is to not have 1,000, 10,000 apps. The idea is about having those 50 or 100 that actually works for you. At the end of the day, it's going to be the 20% of the apps that are going to work for you, right? So, and of course, while we can have random people build an integration, who's going to maintain it? Say, for example, we have had apps built by engineering students, who have taken part in the hackathon. Now we can appreciate them during the hackathon, look at someone who can absorb the app and list it in the marketplace. But I know for a fact that after a year, when he gets a job, he won't be maintaining the app, right? I can't allow those kind of apps in our marketplace. And that way, customers will start losing trust. When that happens, your whole marketplace idea goes for a toss. The idea of marketplace is, of course, list and show the integrations that are there. But at the same time, customers are going to check the use case, whether it works or not, and then go for it. If not, the marketplace will just be a junk where people are just going to list everything. There's not going to be any trust, right? Think about it. It's about why you're buying in Amazon, because you trust Amazon, right? Even though there are a lot of apps or other products, you don't go to any other random website and buy it because of the trust. So I believe if we don't do it, if we don't kind of have certain criteria by which we're going to tell a customer that these are going to be the important apps, or these are apps that we certify, or maybe you have a hard process where you kind of certify, verify everything, have a dedicated team for that. Again, that depends on the team bandwidth as well. But if you have a dedicated team, I would recommend doing that. Because at the end of the day, what we are trying to achieve is solve for a customer's problem, thereby revenues, and we shouldn't start from the other way around, where it's the partner that you're going to integrate with and trying to push it to a customer. That'll never work.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think we sort of know as consumers, and Amazon's a perfect example, right? They have third-party sellers and we know they're third-party sellers. But if we have a horrible experience, if the product's completely junk, we still blame Amazon too, right? Like we are like, Amazon, why did you give me this horrible experience? And I think the same can be said for tech platforms. And I know as a business user, right? Like I use HubSpot, for example. If I installed an app and it was a horrible experience, I'm not just blaming that third-party vendor. I'm also going to blame HubSpot for surfacing that to me. And I think that's something, no matter how organizations set that up, they should keep in mind that even if you didn't build that integration, if you're surfacing it to your customers, even if you say buyer beware, it's gonna impact their feelings about you at a minimum.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
something to keep in mind. Um, I think coming from the Freshworks perspective, where with most of your relationships, you were probably the big fish. Do you have any advice for organizations who, beyond what's set out in the program? Like, I think to your point about like, you need to have this many integrations, you need to do the case study. Um, are there ways that you saw where people who, beyond meeting the sort of base requirements, um, could sort of persuade or work with a larger company to have them be more invested in that relationship, sort of beyond where they are in the program?
Yeah, of course, right. So, see, at least from Freshworks perspective, when people are coming to Freshworks, we kind of had a portal, right? We kind of revamped the portal where people are going to sign up for partnership, and we kind of had a series of questions. So, kind of, have you already checked if there are other solutions in our marketplace similar to yours, right? So, if the answer is no, we know for a fact that they haven't given even 5 minutes of thought before building an integration, right? Second question will be something like, what is the use case that you're going to build, right? So if they have not defined that, then we know for a fact that they haven't given a thought. They want to discuss things with us, which means unless you have bandwidth, you can't entertain those kind of audience, right? So at least at Freshworks, what we kind of did is when someone is going to sign up for partnerships, if someone writes to support, we kind of would redirect to the portal, and the portal had a series of questions by which the partners by end of if they had spent 10 minutes answering those 10 questions, we know that they are serious, right? And of course, by going through those questions, they'll also understand step by step. We are actually guiding them to our marketplace. We are guiding them to our API documentation. Say after the use case, third one is, have you checked our API documentation? If not, here's the link. So they kind of go back, see if a use case they are thinking of, is it possible to build? Do we have APIs exposed, etc. Before they kind of come on a call and we discuss partnerships, right? So I think it's important and to ring fence from Freshworks kind of point of view, where we were growing the ecosystem and we kind of ring fence initially asking the right set of questions so that partners, before building an integration or before even getting on a call, they kind of realize where they are, and then kind of and then of course you'll have to filter even after that, but nevertheless, at least you can no, I wouldn't say avoid, but kind of educate partners who want to work with you, right? Because Freshworks is big. People are excited about working in Freshworks, but they also need to understand that certain use cases will not work, right? So that's what I would recommend for someone who is looking at building an ecosystem. For someone who's small, what I would recommend is, so if you're looking at a bigger ecosystem, getting into a bigger ecosystem, it's really important for you to align with their goals, right? At the end of the day, you need to understand how they are working with other partners in the ecosystem. What does their partner page say? What are the different types? What are the kind of rules that they have that I can follow? And just be more methodical in terms of reaching out to these big giants, right? I mean, you may not get responses, you may not have a partner manager, dedicated partner manager, but there'll be a partner support email. Just start writing to them, talk about the use cases, talk about how many people are using the integrations. I'm sure down the line, people are not from the other end are going to take notice of that. And then when you keep talking about the integration publicly in your website, you have a testimony, I'm sure big companies are going to take notice of you. We have seen some really small companies become really big and Shopify, right? The proof is just customers at the end of the day. So I would recommend that if you're small, if you're trying to grow into a bigger ecosystem, start looking at what is important for them and then work backwards so that you can kind of nail it down than trying to directly start from trying to talk to someone there and then moving forward, which is really hard and it's never going to happen in most ecosystems.
Yeah, excellent. I think that's something to remember, that ultimately you have to have somewhat of a relationship-driven mentality and just reaching out, making yourself as visible as possible, and sort of being comfortable, to your point, with some people aren't going to respond. It's going to take time, but we're all humans at the end of the day on both sides of the relationship. So making the effort can go a long way, because I think a lot of small companies just don't. They sort of look at it as a monolithic, and it's sort of a black box. So if you sort of make the effort to reach out. So we're coming up to time. Did you have any sort of final advice you want to share to sort of tech partnership leaders who are scaling their program in terms of advice?
Yeah, so kind of based on my experience and having spoken to a few other partner managers that I used to work with, one common question is, what kind of targets can we take for the teams, right? So, it really depends on what stage you're in, and I would not recommend a tech partner ecosystem to jump in and take revenue targets. If so, you're going to dilute it, right? Think about it. There are SDRs, there are AEs, all of them are doing revenues. The company need not have a partner team again to focus on revenues, right? There are enough people focusing on revenues. It's about what kind of value add you can bring to the customer, right? So think from that perspective and start having, OKRs around that, than jumping into revenues because, of course, revenues is the quickest thing that you can show and kind of come to limelight. But at the end of the day, tech partnerships should be more of providing the backbone for that and then not front end and just focus on revenues. You can have a marketplace, you can do it indirectly, but not just focus on co-sell. What kind of introductions can you give? What can I give, etc. Because that's not a sustainable model in the long term.
Awesome, 100%. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing all this great advice.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kelly. Thank you for having me. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the content, subscribe to our channel and give us a thumbs up. If you're someone who is working on building and scaling SaaS product partnerships, we invite you to apply to be a member of our community at saasecosystemalliance.com.